So, Daniel Bosman, founder of Our Greenery, thank you so much for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
It's a pleasure. Really nice to meet you.
So, what's the best thing that happened to you this week?
Well, that's funny that you're asking this because we are going right now through like a fundraising stage, and we are also signing right now major customers for our Raumgarten in B2B.
Yeah,
And so like there's a lot of pressure on me as the CEO. I'm doing the sales right now. I'm doing together with one of my team members. I'm doing the fundraising. And today I've been to Google at their campus and we
mm,
discussed our products at their campus, which is exciting. But I also, while I was at the meeting, I got just before I got an email of an investor that just signed a ticket,
that's nice.
and all of that after I yesterday kind of manifested. I have a Buddhistic background. I manifested, this is now the quarter. We have to pull it off.
Yeah.
And that was just exciting. So, yeah, you hit it right on the nail, I would say.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're in Berlin?
I'm located in Berlin with my company. We have
Okay.
two locations. One is like outside of Berlin,
Yeah.
where we're working more with the region around Berlin that is experts in vertical farming, indoor gardening. But yeah, if you want to build a startup, you have to be in Berlin.
It's been many years. I did go to Berlin probably maybe 6 years ago, and I have a passion for electronic music. So, one of my
Me
stop,
too.
one of my stops was Berghain. We were able to get in with my ex-wife, and so it was a very epic experience.
Amazing. It's one of the best clubs I have been to. I have like two, three different friendship circles, and I'm among all of them the only one who was never rejected at Berghain. I never went. No, no. I've been there like
Yeah,
7 or 8 times.
yeah.
And yes, pre-COVID was, of course, a completely different ballgame. It used
Mm,
to be so much more casual. I think like COVID made a lot of people have more FOMO. I feel like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the prices went up, which is okay. They were too low before, I would say, because the clubs are still full. But yeah, Sisyphus, Berghain, Kater Blau, there are like a lot of very beautiful places to enjoy electronic music.
Yeah, yeah, for
Your
sure.
favorite DJs?
Ooh, I grew up in New York, and so I have a passion for like Chicago house sound, like Carter, Mark Farina, DJ Sneak.
Nice.
Yeah, and then definitely some of the obviously techno is big in Berlin, so I like Plex. Is
Hmm.
a really good sound, and then yeah, there's so many good DJs. Sometimes when I try to think of them all, I'm like I can't think of one name, but I actually got into podcasting because in 2013 I created a mobile app. It was called Know Your DJ, and it was like
Mm.
a Pandora, but just for electronic music. And I wanted people to find DJs because I would go to festivals, my ex-wife, and we would see the DJ playing, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's the DJ because I know the sound, but I don't know the face. So I built this app, and then I went to a podcast conference to learn how to podcast because I wanted to interview DJs, like Resident Advisor, which is a popular podcast for DJs. And I got to the conference, I realized how hard it was going to be to interview DJs who are traveling the world, right? So it's globetrotting DJs to try to nail them down for an interview would be almost impossible. So
Impossible, no?
switched to podcasters, and my first show is Podcast Junkies, which I just celebrated 10 years this year, and it's interviews with other podcasters.
Nice.
So that's how
Okay.
my podcasting journey began, and then I started this show in 2020, and naturally I already was very comfortable with long form conversations. That's why I felt comfortable having conversations on a topic that I was learning about for the first time, vertical farming. I wanted to speak to the decision makers, the people who, are starting these companies, because I'm really passionate about origin stories.
Hmm.
It's such
Oh
an
man,
yeah.
then we have things to discover here. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, just to round up the DJ aspect, like obviously Fred again is right now the young demigod
Yeah.
of electronic music. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
But like for me, John Talabot
Tell
is,
about, yep.
yeah, you know him as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
of course,
I
yeah.
enjoyed him in Berghain. That was
Yeah.
amazing. And Bicep, I really like as
Oh,
well.
Bicep is good. Yeah.
You know them too? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Tale of Us as well. I'm thinking about folks in the space is like, yeah, they'll come to me, and I'm sure I'll give some names throughout our conversation, and I'll mention
You
another
just
one. But
drop them in there.
yeah, 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 so it'll be good. So talk to me about the journey. So did you study university in Berlin? And we'll wind the clock back a little bit, but I'm
Yeah.
curious because you've got an interesting and varied background in a lot of different disciplines. So I'm curious how your journey got started in business and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, the very, very early beginning was I met two friends. They were 2 years older than me. They still are. And I was 17, they were 19, and they bought a Bully. like a Volkswagen Bulli, and we changed the interior to a bar, and we drove in front of all the clubs and sold very shitty cocktails into the crowd, and until the bouncers offered us a very bad beating because, they said to us the people should come in sober and leave drunk, and you guys make the people come in drunk.
That's funny.
And yeah, that was basically the very early start. And I studied in Berlin economics. I stopped, I think you say dropped out, because I just realized I know how to earn money. I know how to start projects that felt like has no value for me anymore. I started to work as a sourcing manager and for a big company here in Berlin. And eventually I realized that all of this is nice, but I felt like Berlin back then, 2001, 2002, it felt a little bit provincial almost. Berlin was a very, very different city back then. So I started to move around the world. I lived in Australia, Taiwan. In Australia, I started a construction company. I don't put that on LinkedIn because we basically drilled, like we dig the hole and for a pool and we cut the main power cord. And that costed me exactly the same amount of money that I would have made with this project. So yeah, in Australia and in Taiwan, a bit more successful. We started a surfboard factory, a partner and I. First year, absolutely horrible surfboards, absolutely crazy. Really like getting phone calls from like some angry Australian guy, like, "Hey, Danny, what the fuck's going on with those surfboards, mate? You gotta pick them up, man. It's fucking horrible." And eventually,
Were they just falling apart, or what was going on?
like on surfboards, because it's such a delicate product,
Yeah.
like it really requires craftsmanship. And in the beginning, we just hired a lot of Chinese workers, which, never surfed. But eventually I nailed a deal, like after like 9 months, I nailed a deal with Quicksilver. And we made a deal. I told them, you will get lifelong discounts. I cannot disclose so much for you teaching us quality control in surfboards. And so, yeah, eventually I managed to get the quality up after 12 months. And that was, yeah, the breakthrough. Since then, we produced the best surfboards. We're still producing. I mean, I'm not on the board anymore. I
Yeah,
sold
yeah.
my shares, but it still is the best surfboard factory in the world.
That's great.
Yeah. And then sustainable product development, a lot with the artist families in Europe, some impact companies like Sea Shepherd, Greenpeace, and then, yeah, more and more entrepreneurship. And yeah, that's basically that journey. Here we make a short mini break to get your jacket. Okay, go, go, go.
No, no worries.
You need to get your jacket too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We didn't think everything through, but
That's okay.
almost everything.
Note to the editing team to make sure. I've been podcasting, like I said, 10 years. I've seen everything, one time,
Not everything.
but it's all sorts of interruptions, dogs, the mailman, like it's so many. I was an interruption once when I was recording somebody and it was on my side. So I went to go answer it. And my guest was still waiting for me to come back. So he took a phone call, he on the phone call. And then I came back and then we started the conversation. Somehow, I think I was editing at the time. I missed it and I left that whole piece inside the interview. So one of my fans of the show, he's like, "Hey, I know you want to be like real in these podcasts, but did you mean to leave this in? Because it sounds like it's a really awkward silence and this like, you can hear your guest on his personal phone call." And so I had to like re-edit the
Imagine
audio and
you would have disclosed some
yeah.
information.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, just at this point, I've almost seen anything, and I appreciate the casualness of podcast interviews. With it, it's like we're
Me
not
too.
NDR, so we're being realistic. Like real life sometimes takes over. So,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
think
if you want,
we have to step away from trying to be perfect or pretending something that is not natural, because
yeah,
I feel that is actually one of the roots of our current society issues, that we are that like I'm 43 years old,
yeah,
so I grew up like before the internet pretty much. I mean, the internet was around, but I
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
use
yeah,
it. And like my comparisons were my brothers or my dad or my mom, like they're real people.
yeah,
But this artificial way of comparison creates a lot of pressure that we are giving ourselves, like younger people and so on.
yeah, yeah,
I hope we're stepping away from that.
yeah, for sure. So we'll re-edit back in here. So you want to just pick up? You were talking about bringing us to present day with your companies.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot more brands. I founded a few e-commerce brands. which I scaled. In between, I started a restaurant with a bunch of friends that we sold 2019, just before COVID, so perfect timing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, then COVID came. My brother and I, we founded the company, Our Greenery. We had the motivation to do something with food because our mom used to be 2 years in a German hospital here,
Mm,
suffering from leukemia, and
mm,
it was a very bad mutation. And like I went there for 2 years every second day, and I had a lot of arguments with the doctors because the food and the whole setup was so bad. It didn't help people to really heal.
yeah.
So eventually, my brother and I, we decided that once we both are not in current projects, we do something together, and it has to be with food. And I did a lot of research over the lockdown. I went really deep into nutrition and understanding more about the impact of supply chain on the nutritional values. I mean, you know all about this, but I was shocked when I understood that food in the supermarket, although it looks good, only carries like 20% of the nutritions, sometimes even less. So I decided to, yeah, to develop a disruptive concept. And for that, hyper local production and high
Mm,
quality, always harvested on demand was
mhm.
the way to go. Yeah. And then we started Our Greenery.
And the food looks good when you buy it. A couple of days later and you open it, it doesn't last long. We see this here in the States. A lot of the leafy greens comes from California. And if you're living in New York, that's traveling 3,000 miles and whatever they injected inside the bag to sort of keep it fresh they're keeping it fresh for transport. They're not necessarily keeping it fresh for consumption because they just want it to look good by the time it's outside. And I've done the comparisons, and because we get our lettuce now from a greenhouse here in Minnesota, and it's Revel Greens, and you can see it's tastes fresher, it's crisper, it just lasts longer. It could go a couple of weeks in the fridge. I don't think most consumers think of this when they walk into the supermarket to think about turning over the clamshell, turning over the package to say where did this come from? How far did it have to travel to get here?
Yeah. And that's two things about this. The first one, you know, as long as profit trumps quality, you have this issue, right? Because then the customer is requested or basically left with the responsibility to figure out what really this product is about. And that I think is not really the duty, like that's not really fulfilling, from my perspective at least, the duty that a company has that provides a service. The second thing that I really find helpful to explain to people that do not know anything about the industry is if you see the life cycle of foods, of produce, like this, like we receive the food in the supermarket at this very, very end. Here's the farm, here's the plate, and we are receiving it here.
Yeah,
It's just about to die, or
yeah,
it's in the process of dying already, and because it's harvested. And what happens if you eat the food right here? Like we in Europe, I always tell people, like if you're in Italy and you eat tomatoes or rucola, it's so much more flavorful, not because the Italians have the more to grow the food. It's just because from harvest to consumption, it's just such a short window. And that's the game changer, really. Yeah. Plus, and that's something that I'm really passionate about, is options. Who is deciding? Like, I believe in freedom. I'm half Dutch, half French, living in Berlin, obviously. So to me, I feel like who is deciding for me what is available in the supermarket? It is decided probably by big companies
oh
to
yeah.
say, this looks the longest good
Hmm.
before it goes bad.
Sure.
And therefore we can grow it scaled, like in mass production on a field. It's not complicated, doesn't give us a headache. Like in the Raumgarten behind me, we have already 138 different kinds of produce
Hmm.
within our community tested,
Yeah,
like from chilies to like really rare herbs from Georgia,
yeah.
Europe.
Okay.
It's just amazing. It's
Yeah.
just, I love it.
So yeah, it's interesting. Just one last note on that is there's a book that was recommended to me by a previous guest. It's called The Secret Life of Groceries. It's very eye-opening and disturbing because it tells you all the insights of like how food, is shipped. So it goes into like, shrimp farms in Thailand. It goes to the shipping industry and all the bad things that happen with like these truck drivers and how they get paid very poorly. And even like tomatoes are kept in warehouses where they're preserved there just after they're picked for weeks until they're ready to be shipped. And so, that's why nowadays, like none of this stuff has any flavor. And
Yeah.
having had to experience it, even now, we're growing our own produce here for the first time. I grew up in New York City and I've lived in Los Angeles. And so now to
Yeah.
be
City
in the
boy like
Midwest
me.
and actually growing your own food and picking a cherry tomato off the vine and eating it immediately, it's like the flavor is like exploding in your mouth. And so it's
Yeah.
just a lot of it is education for people and just understanding like really where their food comes from.
Yeah, totally. We will discover, also through the support of AI, to really understand all the data points and so on. We will discover in the next couple of years. I mean, now this could be the famous moment where I say something and predict the future is coming true. I think we will discover that the scent of food, the scent of a garden, the scent of produce around you has a healthy impact, a health benefit for you. I mean, there are first studies that hint on that. The second thing is interacting with living plants is such a difference, you know? It inspires us. I mean, like the entertainment industry or like information industry, you know, like they're trying so hard to catch our attention and make
Yeah.
us feel rewarded through buttons and sounds and whatever. But picking up, as you said, tomato from a vine and eating it, I mean, that's just all you need, right? And in the Raumgarten, I mean, this is not me making advertisement, but I'm really enthusiastic about it. Opening the front door, the smell that you receive, you know, like of
Mm.
sage and thyme and all these different herbs, and you're picking something and eating it. I have two investors that invested in my company only because it tasted something. Maybe
Yeah.
they checked a little bit the numbers as well, but you know.
So Daniel, how did you do? You mentioned you did some research, but I'm curious, what you saw from your perspective about this space, and specifically, like there's various facets to indoor farming, right? There's the big industrial companies who are producing indoor produce on a mass scale, and then there
Mm,
are the folks who are in the appliance sector, if you will. So
yeah.
coming at it from a business perspective, because we do have people who are entrepreneurs and first-time farmers, there's also container farms as an option. So when you thought of or you did your research into what the landscape looked like, how did you make the decision to decide on the form factor you finally selected?
Amazing, amazing question. Yeah, I mean, I first of all think that in order to solve this problem, which we are facing, food security, food quality, reconnecting people with what they eat, right? That in itself is such a tremendous task that I believe we need all of the solutions that are being created right now. You know, from a massive vertical farm to a traditional farm, you know, like long cyclic food production for grain and corn. And at the same time, you need something like this, where the life cycle of a plant is really, really impacted by a supply chain journey. So I think you need many different aspects to it to create a holistic solution. But I have I am designing concepts and products since ever. So for me, it's really, really important to design something that inspires people on a regular basis and that makes things applicable to your own life. So when I thought, what kind of solutions do I want to create? I want to inspire people to be their own gardeners without having to read a book, without having to like find all the answers by themselves, but like if you look at our products, like from 1 to 10, you know, maybe I rephrase that, and but we can leave it inside, I don't care, you know, like from 1 to 10 of the engagement level that you have with the product.
Yeah,
And let's say 1 is no engagement possibility at all, like it's very pre-predicted for you.
yeah.
Our products are very, very much in the middle. Like certain aspects of regularity, they're very much perfectly decided for you, but
Hmm.
everything else is all explorative. You can grow just what we provide. You can grow open source, whatever you want. You can share with your community, with our community, what you have grown. So we have more and more availability. That to me is really important, that we are really creating a community and take, if we want to, the responsibility of what we eat and what the quality of it is in our own hands if we want to. You know, that I think is really, really key. And the other thing is, I did a lot of research. I almost joined Infarm 2015, I think. I think
Okay.
they were already 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I almost joined them because they were having a hard time like deciding B2B, D2C. They were a little bit lost there. And I almost came on board, but I always had this feeling that to create a company, you need to be really close to the people. And I also felt that the energy question was not really answered. As now in hindsight, it sounds like I'm really smart. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm really not. I felt like as long as your unit economics are based on individual plans and the margins can be eaten up by the answering of energy, which we all are feeling is going to be soon answered,
Sure.
this is a big gamble. And the Raumgarten that stands at customers like Marriott Hotel or like canteens of big German companies that are, yeah, I feel like there the energy question is answered to some extent,
Hmm.
but it will be easier to optimize this product than a massive farm, like having safe energy saving elements such as dimmed lights. I can implement this very quickly. A massive farm has their different angles to play. And yeah, I wanted to build products that are really close to us.
So talk a little bit about the offerings right now, because you've got the Raumgarten and you've got the Tischgarten as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, a question because we are like now delivering products to the Netherlands, Denmark.
Yeah.
Like when you read Tischgarten and Raumgarten, was it something that was very strange for you, or is it a little bit like the IKEA effect that you understand, okay, this is a company that's coming from Germany?
I mean, the word itself wouldn't have any meaning, obviously, unless you knew what the definition of it was. So I think it just feels like it's a brand or a model, similar to like
Mhm.
the way IKEA brands all of its furniture with its Swedish names that no one can pronounce. But I don't know if it's anything that would designate, you can if you just saw the two names without any visuals, you would have no idea that it doesn't tell you anything about the garden or what it does or the size
Mhm.
or, so I think obviously in line with like the visual that sort of is helpful. But I think probably for and it might be a good start, like where you came up with the name Raumgarten and Tischgarten and the thinking
Mhm.
behind that. But for as you look to expand to an English speaking audience, and obviously, even just within English, there's no one, UK,
True.
Australia, US, it could be Canada. It's all seen differently. So there could be
Yeah.
some thinking about, maybe how rebranding it could be more accessible.
Yeah. So Tischgarten stands for table garden and
Hmm.
Raumgarten stands for room garden.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's gonna get a little bit incongruent anyway because now we are working on the mushroom garden, which is in German. Like, but then it communicates what's grown inside.
Yes.
Actually, now I realize this, and maybe we are starting to rework a little bit on the wording. We came up with the products and the offerings because like the first idea, Tischgarten, table garden, like it's like maybe to explain it a bit more, it's a ceramics bowl with a lid, and you can just add like a certain disc of cellulose and a disc of hemp,
Hmm.
and the hemp is simulating the earth. The cellulose is like a water storage. You add the seeds that you want to grow, you add the water, you put the lid on. 2 days later, you take the lid off, and then microgreens of any sort, wheatgrass, whatever, like all kinds of superfoods, they're growing then, but you don't need to water them anymore because
Mm.
added enough water at the setup that the roots can grow into the cellulose and then the product just grows out by itself. You don't need to do anything, you don't have any maintenance. That's basically the ground nominator for all our products, right? It should be very easy to set up. It should be no maintenance or very little. And the outcome should be fresh produce that you eat when you harvest it. And the Tischgarten was a very simple product, basically to test the market, to understand how far our customers, but furthermore, it helped us to set up the supply chain of a manufacturer, quality control. How do you call that? Like the facility that delivers all the products for you,
Yeah, the distribution center.
distribution center,
Yeah.
branding,
Yeah.
customer care. We
Yeah.
set up all of this with an open access product that has the goal to create community with a very simple product,
Okay.
that cannot go wrong.
Yeah.
Funny side note, we are producing the Tischgarten in Ukraine, and we still do. We are staying loyal to them. I think that's the best way to support them.
Yeah.
For all the people that do not agree, I'm sorry that you lost a few listeners. And in the meantime, while we scaled the Tischgarten, we developed the Raumgarten at the
Okay.
same time. So it was a bit of a stain on my team,
Hmm.
but at the end of it, we have had the chance to be very close to the market, very close to the customers, which I believe is super important because we have 2 iterations in the Tischgarten already after 3 years. And now with the Raumgarten, bless you, we learned to really have, like, we are in touch with our customers. We learned how to handle criticism. We learned, which is for a small team, a challenge, right?
Sure.
Because people love your product or they hate your product, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We are living in the times where there's no middle ground. And that was really good for us, I think. We learned very quickly to implement. We were a customer base in which we can just order, like start a pre-sale.
Yeah.
You know, we
Okay.
we have customers that were very loyal. We can just send them the first version of the Raumgarten, which was really not good, but they were just using it and giving us feedback.
So, talk a little bit about the form factor, because when it comes to in-home appliances, there's obviously the very basics and the people who have been doing this for many years. The Tower Garden, which is the standard, anyone who's done any sort of hydroponics or indoor farming and are sort of the early pioneers probably started with a Tower Garden. It's a, PVC tower, not very attractive to the eye, but it does the job, right? And so there's been variations of that I've seen throughout the years. And then there's actually the in more looking at as an appliance, so it sort of has the dimensions of like maybe a dishwasher and under the counter appliance as
Mm,
well. And then you've got that are actually like full scale, like looks like a piece of furniture, which is kind of like where it looks like Raumgarten is headed. So as you started to think about the fact that that you were targeting residential with the Raumgarten, and maybe back up, what was the goal? Because it looks like it could be residential, but you, like you said yourself, you're working with hotels, and
yeah.
it sounds like, and based on your background, that form factor was really important, that visual appeal.
You've done some good research. Yeah, that's definitely my passion because I feel like similar to how Tesla approached the market with the Roadster S, we wanted to develop a product which is understood as a design piece, but also at the same time, like really showing what we can do. Like this is a fully optimized product which is so energy efficient. You can harvest between 6 to 7 kilos out of the sideboard shaped furniture piece, right? It's 100 centimeters times 85 height and only 45 centimeters deep. So it's really like a sideboard. You can place it anywhere because it has an integrated water tank, right? Like we wanted to make a product that can be placed anywhere in a basement, but also in the living room, like it stands in my house in my living room. So it's perfect for early adopters, that want to show a little bit with their friends. Hey guys, let's have a cocktail, or we can harvest something from like pick your own. Do you want to have a basil smash? Here you go,
Yeah.
like, like this show. I think when you want to create a brand that stands at the end, this is the goal of Our Greenery
Hmm.
as one of the change makers to bring food home and make people healthier and happier through food and through these experiences. You have to start with high ambitions. If you develop the first product, which is super basic, and you want to build nicer and nicer products, you can start a new brand, right? I mean, look at Lexus, right? The
Yeah.
origins of Lexus. Lexus needed to be created in order to, yeah, have a product that people would accept
Yeah.
as a luxury car. So I find that very fascinating. I find that, and I love to inspire people. And once they are inspired, they would love to explore what else you have to offer within
Mm.
your range of products. So for me, it was important to have a product that is a standalone version that can be eventually displayed ideally in like some fancy magazines because we are very early in this journey, right? Like not Our Greenery per se, but we as humans are very early in the journey of understanding that the food that we can buy right now is of bad quality. And therefore, the early adopters, the 5% in each country of the GDP high enough, like there are very few people basically. There's still a lot for Our Greenery as a customer base, but they represent a small share of the market. And we still have to go over the top. And then we have to make sure that this becomes a mass applied product eventually.
Yeah, from the looks of your CV on LinkedIn, it's almost like all roads led here because you have a background in minimal design, furniture design, and also jewelry design. I saw as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is, for example, a jewelry piece of Sea Shepherd, right? I
Yeah,
mean, for me, it was important. Like, you can buy this to support Sea Shepherd. They approached me and they said, "Hey, we would like to have something that communicates what we do, but we want it to be sustainable." And
sure.
sustainable is not only recycled plastic; it's
Yeah.
like a vegan leather,
Okay.
but it's stainless steel, right? So
Okay.
it doesn't rust. It lasts forever,
Yeah.
theoretically.
Yeah.
I mean, not theoretically, but it could last
Yeah.
for a very long time. And yeah, so I love to include the concept of like the brand into something that people could really like and
Hmm.
enjoy. So yeah, that was for me very important with our greeneries product, you know. And I'm a bit of a hardware guy, you know. I love things that I can touch and that make me feel something.
Yeah. Well, it's important, this idea of something that can make you feel something.
Mm.
Where does that desire come from in you?
Good question. I mean, when I was a kid, I played with Lego and I always played myself as Daniel, the inventor. And I love to invent stuff because I mean, basically, I did a meta perspective of the best way how to play with Lego,
Sure,
which is
sure.
just inventing stuff.
Yeah.
But I personalized it a bit more. And I always love to create new things that really, yeah, that I found has a combination of usefulness and design. You know, these two things always fascinated me. And with our greenery, that basically is now hopefully the pinnacle of that journey, you know, where like a furniture piece can inspire people to live healthier, better, for kids to learn again about food, you know, like opening it and understanding what sage is and understanding all the other herbs. I mean, you are now really, how to say, like you're very connected, right? You're growing your own food, you're doing a lot of things. But in Germany, sometimes there are kids in kindergarten, and if they're not from a middle or high middle class family, they maybe know with 8 years old. I mean, then they're not in kindergarten anymore. But then they don't know many salads, herbs, fruit,
Sure.
vegetables. And I find that crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah, I mean, that's why you see a lot of programs here in the States with urban farming and just educating, inner city kids and taking them to farms. And sometimes it's the first time they've tasted like something grown from the ground and not bought on a shelf. And it's really like opens their eyes. And I think the more opportunities to do that, I think is going to be helpful for new generation to understand that there's other options now. I think in the past you would have to take someone out of the city to have that experience, and now with products like Raumgarten, they can have that experience in home or in a school or in a hotel and start to experience that firsthand what that difference really is.
Yeah, we have a few schools as customers. We didn't approach them because that's not with our ICP, but they just wrote us the same as private households. They're not our ICP that we target, but we're getting constantly approached. And for us, this is a bit of a, how to say, it's a bit of a distraction, of course, right? But I feel like I don't do our greenery for the money. And I think this might have been said a couple of times on many podcasts before. But I was very lucky in my life. I managed to pick the right project at the right time. You know, like the restaurants that we had, they were the first ones in Berlin that brought craft beer to Germany. You know, like it was a super subculture, but we made it really, like my two partners and I, we really made it like available in a restaurant with a proper seating, 190 chairs and so on. I feel like I understand a little bit of what might be coming. Many people told me, like, when I built the surfboard factory already, I'm absolutely insane because nobody would ever buy a surfboard from a factory because everybody wants this romantic idea of this shaper at the beach. It's the same, right? People tell me, like, are you crazy? Infarm went bankrupt now. Aerofarms is like went down. Why would you do this? You know, there's so many easier ways to make money. But I feel, and coming back to your question, we have to be approachable by everyone because although it's harder, we cannot say no to people that want to change in that direction, right? And of course, they buy at the end the product. But at the moment, D2C for us is a lot of management and a lot of cost. But we do that because I feel like this is where the community is developed, right? So like Mercedes-Benz or like any other big company in their canteen, they don't experiment. They want regularity. They
Yeah.
want guarantee harvest quantities. And this is what we can provide. But my heart goes a little bit more into the person that tried the fifth different chili and invites the community. Hey guys, this
Yeah.
is working, you know,
Sure.
everybody.
Is that something that you're looking into, building a community? Because I feel like that's, especially with new products like this, you get these early adopters and they become your champions because they're, like you said, they're testing new things out. They get excited and they want to share that news. And if you start to have people who are the early adopters and testing stuff out, they almost they're like an extension of your R&D department.
Exactly. This is the idea behind our greenery, that it's an open access system in which everybody can share their own experiments. We have the plugs or the pads that are like with seeds or without. And then without the seeds, you just install them in your product and you basically use your own seeds from like one of the tomatoes that you picked, right? I mean, you cannot do this with the supermarket tomato, but you can do it with the stuff that you grow yourself, with fruit, with all this kind of stuff. We can reactivate edible things that are not available anymore, you know? Like I always like this example of seed vault, you know, this thing in Norway where they stored all the seeds
Yeah.
from all over the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have 40,000 edible plants in the world. And we are making every day with the community a step closer to these 40,000. And there you can go really wild, right? Like we are building everyday solutions by working with stainless steel and creating solutions that work. But it is possible
Hmm.
if we take the examples of nature, for example, ayahuasca, which is like a piece of a tree and a leaf, you know, combined, and then you have like a crazy psychedelic trip.
Yeah.
How many iterations it must have taken people to find out that's a combination. If we make 5,000 or like 1,000 different kinds of plants available in our products, one day somebody will combine something that might help reduce the growth of T cells, you know, of cancer
Hmm.
cells, or,
Sure.
you know, people say, oh, that's ridiculous. I don't know, you
Yeah.
know, I don't know, but let's just at least create the option compared to what we are doing right now, which is basically growing food and then eating it when it's almost too late.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this can go down a separate rabbit hole into the intelligence of plants and like
Yeah.
plant journeys. And, I have a special place in my heart having done some plant medicine journeys before. And the way I've heard it described with ayahuasca, when you ask the shamans, is that when they say, "How did you know to put these two together?" They say, "The plants told us." So, so
I mean, that's what we are now discovering with, for example, jaguars, right?
yeah.
They eat before they go hunting, they eat magic
Hmm.
mushrooms
Yeah.
and they change the whole observation of the environment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Somehow they receive more information than before. And I would not recommend myself doing like extreme sports on the magic mushrooms, but I mean, the jaguar does, you know?
Yeah, nature finds a way. So talk a little bit about, obviously, for people who are watching this on YouTube when it's published, they'll be able to see the unit, but maybe just describe it a little bit of theater of the mind for the people who are listening. Your decision on the form factor, you use slide trays that slide out. So can you talk a little bit about the design and
Yeah.
what, if any, impact that has on what you can grow, obviously because of the height of the individual sections. And so I'm just curious about that thought process.
So we have three levels shaped in a sideboard shaped furniture piece. The top is for microgreens of all sorts. We have 12 fields on which you can grow all different variations if you want. It's a drawer that you can basically pull towards you. And the lower level is two levels within one chamber that you can open like an oven door. And then you have inside sliders that you pull towards you, like in a dishwasher. For me, it was very important that this novice kind of technology, you know, that we are bringing home has elements that we are knowing. You know, a drawer we know from a cabinet,
Yeah.
the door we know from an oven, and
Yep.
the drawers we know from a dishwasher. Below here in the middle is a water tank that stores enough water for you to refill it maybe every 2 weeks. Depends if you grow a lot of microgreens and a lot of very thick leafy greens, then you might need to fill it up every 10 days. Here, there's a unit, which is like a patented system for automated dosing for each level. It helps the user to just have an autopilot. They don't need to dose anything. It just always per circulation doses the water. And that's basically the ground function to it. We have individual little hubs that you can take out, and there you put the plug in, and there you put the seeds in, or the seeds are already inside of the plug. And then the customer receives this product when they buy it, and then they can sign up for a subscription, and then they're getting like all the stuff to grow food on a regular basis. They have the option to vary it. They can also pause it if they go on vacation. Very, very simple.
And did you choose this specific size of unit because of the interest in going after like the bigger locations like hotels, maybe like schools, or because they would have the need for like this quantity of produce?
Almost. I
Yeah.
would say then I would have been smarter. But for me, the most important thing was to not produce a dishwasher or a wash machine for your living room. I mean, that's where I come from, right?
Yeah.
And that put my team under a lot of pain because, like when I started this company, I think I have a bit of a persuasion and a bit of an ability to make people believe in my mission.
Yeah.
So I looked into the other companies, like InFarm, and then there's some others in Berlin. And I visited some events where I met some of them, and I could understand which of these are really talented people. So I approached them and I said, hey, why don't you work with me? We are creating this company. We have a bit of a different approach. Maybe this is interesting. So I gathered all these very, very talented people in my company now, which makes fundraising easier, which makes product development obviously easier. But they are suffering because they work with a guy that is not at all a gardener, that is just saying like, no, these are the measurements of the product. And they're going like, but why? Why don't we build a high product? And I
Yeah.
say, if we build a high product, it's unattractive for people, for somebody to put it in the living room. The first people that buy this product will not be gardeners,
Yeah.
because I mean, that's not true. We have some gardeners that buy the product as well, but it needs to be stylish. It needs to be cool. It needs
Hmm.
to be slick. And this is the difference between Apple and all the other companies before. And now look where Apple is standing, right?
Sure. Sure.
Like because they understood what people really want. And people want healthy food,
Yeah.
but they also want something that they can be proud of. And the produce is the result of it, yes, but I think the tools, like look at the very special barbecue, like if you go to your friend's place, and they have a really cool one,
Yeah.
they're proud of it. And I think that's a good feeling because that's inspiration. And like we don't have on our website, like we don't talk about global warming, we don't talk about the bad things that are going on in the world. I think we all know plenty of it, and it's decelerating our ability to change, I feel.
Mm. Yeah.
That can be misunderstood. I think having information and talking about the issues in the world is super important, but my brand should inspire you to live healthier, to live happier,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
And there's an urgency inside of Our Greenery, but there's not the warning signs on every corner.
Sure. Yeah.
So for me, that was really crucial. And therefore, we have quicker harvest cycles, because otherwise the plants are growing against the lights and so on. But that doesn't mean that eventually we will have a modularity where you can take the middle level out. We're experimenting already with that. But don't develop features of your product before the market really said, I want this. So far, people say, can I have a smaller Raumgarten? That would not make sense because let's say I would produce half of the product. It costs almost the same on CO2. It
Mm.
costs almost the same on material. It's
Hmm.
just everything is a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really, like you would have a drastically reduced quantity of harvest.
Yeah.
This one produces 6 kilos. It uses 40 kilowatts per month. That's like 12 euros.
Yeah.
I think US dollar is almost the same at the moment. That's very, very efficient
Hmm.
for what the unit does. Plus, you grow it in your living room or in your kitchen
Yeah.
or in your company's office.
What's a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently?
Timing. Timing was for like when InFarm went down, I was wondering if we were maybe a bit too early still. But every single customer that has the product is so in love with it, and That just means that we need to find a better way to tell our story. And since 3 months, I was lucky to like take some form an advisory board, and I really have very, very good business angels, and they're helping us now to focus even better on B2B, also giving us some intros into big companies, going a little bit higher on the decision ladder and then making the right decisions. Yeah, but I mean, our greenery started during the lockdown, which on one hand was smart for the idea, but we still needed 1.5 years to develop the product. And during this time, supply chain, like getting different parts from all over the world was difficult. Then, like we have shortages on so many parts, like still global supply chains under a lot of pressure. Then the whole vertical farming crisis,
Yeah.
then the recession, investors are losing money because many of the companies go bust. Like we have really had so many challenges, and I really feel like now, yeah, we are still becoming every month more successful. So yeah, the toughest question that I had to ask myself was timing, but that was maybe last year. What else? Tough questions. No, I think at the moment it's going pretty good.
That's good to hear.
A bit
So,
more, like two or three more tickets from business angels would be amazing.
yeah,
Makes everything a little bit more breathable
yeah, for
because we're
sure.
really tight. I financed the company for the first year by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that just shows that how much you believe in what you've created here. And so, nothing speaks to that more than to invest in yourself and invest in your team. And I'm sure to outside investors and new investors, they see that and they see that's important because it shows how much you believe in your product.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Plus that we, as I just mentioned, have been like this industry and the economy as a whole has been going through so many challenges, with wars breaking out and just like so much pressure on the consumer as well, right? Where should he or she put his or her money? Right? What's important right now? Like so many people that started to finance houses and so on and so forth are under a lot of pressure now because of interest rates that went up. I think the breathing space is just at the moment more rare, but I feel like this cleans the market that helps real innovation to come through. And yeah, this is to me another, as you said, like a proof of how hard and dedicated we are with
Yeah.
this company.
So I've been leaving some time at the end of these conversations, Daniel, for any messages or any thoughts you have for the indoor farming community. There's a lot of your peers, colleagues in the space, other CEOs and founders that listen to the show as well. So in the interest of forming this like open dialogue, and obviously there's so many different facets to indoor farming now, as we discussed earlier, and you're relatively new to the space, but I'm curious in the time that you've spent here, I don't know how much you've spent at conferences or events where you get to engage with some of your colleagues in the indoor farming space, but any thoughts come to mind or any messages that you have for this
Yeah,
audience?
for sure. I took half a year ago an ambassador role in GICA. It stands for Global Impact Capital Alliance, and I'm there responsible for nutrition and food tech. Prior to this, I invited every single person that works in this industry to our showroom or to our office. I really believe that we can only solve this together. So anyone which is in Germany, Europe, but also globally, believes in creating a network where the CTOs figure stuff out together. The CEOs are maybe even talking about how to approach the market. Like I really believe that together we are standing a way better chance. Like this market is so young. Like vertical farming per se has, of course, a little bit more traction and has proven a lot more. And our greenery is building on top of that a lot. But I really think that like even the D2C brands, even the brands that are doing similar products that we do, like let's look into our timeline of the next products that we want to do. Let's not develop at the same time the same product, like the only beneficiary from that will be like paid ads, because we try to outperform each other.
Yeah.
Let's find complementary ways of growing and let's
Yeah.
exchange information. And I'm all for that, really. I mean, I did talk earlier about like looking and finding talents for my company, but people would not leave if they don't think the mission should be a different one. I really believe that we have to work there together.
Yeah, yeah, those are very, very important thoughts, and I think that'll resonate a lot with this audience. So I
Mm.
appreciate your team for reaching out. I really enjoyed this conversation, and
Yeah,
thank you for
you too.
sharing this inspiring journey. It's if you think about, how you got started and all the different decisions you've made in your past business life, I don't know that you would have ever predicted you would have ended up here, but it seems like you're poised, given where we are in this world for this is now the next phase of your journey. And I think all that preparation has led you to create something that's very unique and needed as well, which I think is really important. So I'm really excited to see where this goes, and hopefully we continue to stay in touch. And I'm sure if I do return to Berlin, I'll be sure to connect with you.
Now you took my finishing sentence away. Awesome. I love it. First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. And I really appreciated this conversation a lot as well. And sure, man, when you come to Berlin, we're gonna dance, we're gonna have some fun. I mean, as I
Yeah,
said, I love the openness of this community as well.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, maybe there will even be some parallels that we can discover in the electronical dance music and gardening. I think it's all about like shared experiences.
yeah.
It's lovely.
I just set up. I still have my turntables, so I set them up on the other side of this room. I've got my mixer and set up, but I was thinking I could DJ on top of the Raumgarten.
Oh, yes, you can. If you do so,
Yeah,
like we obviously don't ship yet to the US,
yeah.
but when you're in Berlin, we definitely set that up.
We'll do
I
it. We'll
mean,
do
that would
a
be awesome.
that would be a party, and you just DJ, and you'll have the Rum Garden as the stand there. That would be fun. Well, thanks
Awesome.
again. Thanks again. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, you too.